Good morning, everybody. It's Monday, June 16th, and this is the AgYield War Room. I'm Dan Dempsey, and I'll be moderating today's session. As always, if you get any questions or comments, please feel free to drop us a line in the chat area. We'll be sure to get to it during the show. Overnight markets here at July corn down 6 at 438.5. July soybeans were up 4 1/4 at 1074. And July Chicago wheat was down 8 1/4 at 535.5. No export sales announcements here this morning, so we'll jump right in. Hope everybody had a great weekend. I guess what we know this morning, still quite a bit going on. You know, we had a huge announcement last week pertaining to bean oil and some of the new standards that'll be set forth going forward. So I know we'll touch on that here in a minute. We've got continued escalations between Israel and Iran. More bombing here again this morning. So I think outside markets and everybody are closely watching what's going to shake out in terms of that escalation there. And by all accounts, still appears to be a pretty non-threatening weather forecast fundamentally here. I think that's gotten into corn a little bit. But why don't we kick it off? You know, Justin, we were looking last week, and I think we've had kind of a weekend to digest some of the announcements there from last week, and certainly here this morning, you know, bean oil up another 350 here this morning. So maybe give us some thoughts, what your impressions are, and where we go from here.
Yeah, no, I think, you know, everybody needed some time to digest all the information, and you know, my personal opinion is that, you know, reading through it, it's pretty friendly. I think it's hard to slice it any other way. The one thing kind of hanging over is, what do exemptions look like? You know, small refinery exemptions. You know, that's kind of the big. You know, maybe they're going to come back later and exempt all these, and we're not really going to use that much. But I think if you just look at face value, you know, why soybean oil is up 350, it's pretty friendly. I mean, you know, crunching the numbers, you're going to have to crush a lot more beans to hit this number. The bigger part of the whole thing, in my opinion, is the foreign feedstock. You know, where they only get, you know, half the value for RINs. It's really favored toward U.S. production, which we've talked about on the show, it feels like, for over a year.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the smartest decision to make, you know, for a lot of different reasons. Instead of giving farmers, you know, just checks, you're building an industry around, you know, using more product domestically, not having to rely on China or other countries for export. So overall, I think it was very positive. And I think it could be a shift in, you know, the amount of beans that are needed, obviously, in this country. And, you know, you could have a corn soybean battle for acres next year, 2026. I mean, really the bullishness starts, you know, really, you know, call it end of this year, starting in 26. So certainly friendly. You know, the weather's obviously too good, I think, right now. I think if we had any kind of weather issues, we'd probably be sharply higher. Why you're seeing corn down 5 right now and beans up 6. I think if we had any kind of weather concerns, we'd be quite a bit higher than we are now.
So when you when you talk about, obviously, the 26 type of battle for acres or things like that, and you sort of alluded to it, but November, so this year's contract for beans, I mean, it should be supported as well from this?
I think so. If you look at, you know, you look at the number we have written down, I think it's 2.49 billion bushels for crush. Capacity in the U.S. is currently 2.55. Expected to be like 2.65-ish by the end of the year. So you could, you know, put crush up another 150 from where it currently is. We need to crush about another 1.5 billion. I mean, if you're just looking at the numbers that we need to hit from, you know, the EPA's guidance, that's obviously not going to happen. We just can't crush that much, but it could, I would think, jumpstart a lot of these facilities that were kind of on the sidelines of whether to start, you know, building the crush facilities or not. I would think some of those get green lighted pretty quick, you know, if all this kind of pans out. But with current capacity, I guess my point is you could raise it, you know, probably 150, you know, especially if some of these plants go over capacity, if you have good crush margins. So, you know, with the starting point for soybeans, that's making beans pretty tight pretty quick. So if you start, crushing, we'll see what the crush number is today, but we keep breaking records already. Now with some positive news and some much higher prices in soybean oil, I would think we keep breaking records. So yeah, I think it's friendly. I would say, yeah, I'd say no 25 forward.
Okay. Yeah, and we've got a record written down for this year where we've kind of started, right, in terms of the yield. So now it seems like you're going to have a spotlight on any sort of production hiccup, or August obviously being a fireworks type of month for beans.
Yeah, I mean, you've got beans up 6 hesitantly, I think, because the weather's so good, right? I mean, corn's down 5.
Mm-hmm.
So the weather is too good. Like I said, if you came in and had a dry forecast, I think we'd probably be up 30, 40, 50 cents today in beans.
Yeah.
But the weather's just too good right now.
Well, it's going to be at least there's something to talk about for sure. But Dustin, why don't you give us a few thoughts and what's on your mind here as we start the week?
I mean, this bean oil market is probably the top of mind still. Crush margins jumping up to a new high for the move, $1.95 overnight. They're kind of limited because we couldn't price bean oil any higher on Friday. They were at their limit. We have expanded limits today. So it could be a pretty interesting, 4.5 cents and $30 on meal, $1.15 on beans. We're not that far from limit right now in lead month oil. So it'd be curious to see what happens here by the end of the day. Currencies are also not weighing on us. The dollar broke again overnight, trying to start out higher at one point. So we're back to being lower, and the real is higher as well too. Yeah, weather is certainly good. So that's certainly I think helping spreads to widen. Justin's point about these 26 battle for acres. That contract is still within 7 cents of its contract high because it's got forward competition out there, and it has no currency weight right now. Currencies are really a tailwind, at least the recent move in 2025 has been. So yeah, I'm a little supportive. We'll see where we finish the day, I guess.
Well, very good. Ben, what's on your mind?
Real excited about the news for soybeans. Corn, I look at that market, and there seems to be a very vocal conviction that we're going to see an increase in stocks at the end of the month and possibly more corn acres. And I think bullying that short into the end of the month has a lot of risk with it. Should there not be a realization that there is bigger stocks, the way spreads have acted, have people convicted of that, how poorly corn performs when everything points that maybe it should find a little bit of traction, and you're taking a lot of risk into the end of the month. You have July 1st notice date. Maybe there are a lot of basis contracts out there to be priced. I don't know. But that's going to be right at the time where we start to enter pollination, and I'm not going to say it's super threatening weather, but it's certainly not as ideal as what we've seen for the last 4 or 5 weeks. So I think that's worth watching. A lot of open interest in the 430 puts in corn and the 450 line across the board, as well as 440 calls. So we'll see how it plays out here. That's a lot. In my opinion, end of quarter, end of month, I think that short is going to need to see an increase in stocks and an increase in acres, which, starting at the lofty number we did, I think is, even if there's an increase, I think it's going to have to be minimal, and there will be a little bit of PP.
Yeah, Ben, to that point, I think, this EPA guidance, I think, just puts more importance on this report at the end of the month, in my opinion, right? You put more pressure on what acres are going to be and what stocks are going to be on this report. So it'll be interesting. I mean, if you did, if you lost bean acres, right? I don't know if beans could take that personally. And depending what stocks come in, and vice versa, if corn becomes kind of the short leg going into the end of the month, which it feels like that's probably going to be the trend.
Yep.
Watch out if you have a surprise the other way. So
Yeah,
it's just puts more more excitement going into 4th of July weekend. So
How about it? I mean, the next 3 or 4 weeks are going to be, they could be diabolical. I mean, Justin, is there I mean, you mentioned like losing bean acres and things. Is there a path to get into like pipeline on beans with everything that's shaking out right now?
I could argue that we're getting close already.
Yeah.
And if you lose acres, I mean, remember, we're using a record yield. Now you
Right.
can argue that exports are too high, some of those kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
China just had a record month. What we talked about, had a record May for imports of beans. With the currency moves that Dustin's been talking about, I mean, we're kind of sitting at a really interesting inflection point. And I think the market has to get past this, June stocks and acres number, but it could be, we could have some interesting things that change here pretty quick.
Well, very
But
good.
We'll see.
Yeah, definitely. Ryland, let's talk about livestock here a little bit to start the week. Obviously, risk off on Friday. Felt like the outside markets just had everybody wanting to chill out a little bit. And then 6 straight higher closes for July hogs, which, certainly has gotten everybody's attention there. So what are your thoughts as we start the week?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was kind of a weaker close here last week. I mean, I think overall it's hard to say that cash market was disappointing with some of the prices that we're seeing, but in the north we pretty much just saw a steady trade, 240 live. The south was already kind of finished up 235. It's still up 4 to 5 for the week, but it just seemed like you had a little bit of risk off. There's a lot of concerns about what was going on in the outside markets, but on the other hand, the northern kind of steadiest trade, I think soured some expectations to a pretty large degree. So I think that's something that the market's going to have to grapple with at this point. I mean, the beef markets are still higher. We're still seeing pretty light kills. Last week, 558,000 head. So, I mean, overall, it does seem like there is something shifting a little bit. I don't know if it's a near-term shift or this is going to lead to something a little bit more longer term, but it does kind of feel like we are starting to hit a little bit of resistance up here. So a little bit of concern. You got some technical indicators flashing near term down. I mean, you closed under the 10-day moving average. So, I mean, it just overall, it just kind of feels like we're taking a little bit of wind out of the sail. But overall, we still want to see how cash kind of shapes up. The market's just going to hold up here. I mean, steady is still an option. It doesn't just have to be an absolute train wreck like I think everybody's kind of fearing. So seeing how that goes, beef prices are still being held up pretty good at this time of year. So hopefully that's kind of a saving grace to delay, much more weakness overall. But there wasn't a big change in open interest. I mean, open interest is actually up 788 contracts. So we didn't see a heavy amount of liquidation like one would have expected with that kind of down. And managed money is still really long this market. So maybe they're playing a little bit of defense. But yeah, on the hog side of things, I mean, clearly cutout is kind of leading the charge here. I mean, you had just a big up in bellies on Friday. Carcass making a new high for the move. So, I mean, overall, just being up $4, kind of late in the day, I think you're going to keep this momentum going right now. It just feels like it's really a kind of a more of a time frame thing with seasonally demand should be pretty strong here, but we did see a little bit of a crack in the cash market. Cash was down $1 at 104.95. So once again, I think all eyes are on cutout and to see if some of these deferred premiums going to hold. I think we are going to draw out a little bit more hedge pressure here, but overall the demand is strong here for the meat markets.
Very good. Appreciate the update there, Rye. One thing to note, weekly crop progress will be out 3:00 Central. We'll take a look there. We'll visit about that in our evening commentaries and certainly talk about it tomorrow. We've also got Crush will be out, so we'll take a look at that. Appreciate everybody that tunes in on a daily basis. If you wouldn't mind, throw us a like and certainly subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything to do so. It'll keep you up to speed on everything that's going on with AgYield. So again, thanks to everybody that supports the show. We're doing this live every day that the markets are open on X, Facebook Live, and YouTube Live, 8:15 Central Time. Appreciate the thoughts and comments there this morning, guys. It was a good show. Look forward to talking to everybody tomorrow. Have a great day.
The War Room is proudly presented by AgYield. For over 50 years, the AgYield team has provided grain marketing and risk management solutions for growers across the country. Our veteran consultants harness cutting-edge technologies to pinpoint risk, optimize market performance, and protect your farm's profitability. Discover a new approach to farm revenue management at agyield.com. Hey guys, Jack here. Be sure to support the show by hitting the like button, leaving us a comment, and subscribing to the channel for all the latest updates. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.